Now, right before the midnight deadline, Benjamin Netanyahu yielded to demands by the far-right Jewish Home Party to get them to join a coalition. That means that he's on course for a fourth term as Prime Minister, but he leads a fragile coalition with a majority of just one seat. Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat says the new Israeli government will go against peace and stability in the region. Haxi Meyers-Belkin reports.
7 weeks after a decisive election victory and just 2 hours before a final deadline, Benjamin Netanyahu has formed a coalition. Joining those loyal to the Israeli Prime Minister is the ultra-nationalist Jewish Home Party, outspoken in their support for Israeli settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories.
I am sure that no one is surprised that these negotiations were lengthy. And no one is surprised that they ended by the deadline, on time. We have a lot of work ahead of us. There's a lot to do.
In return for his 8 seats in Parliament, leader Naftali Bennett demanded the Justice Ministry, a critical post in which he'll be charged with ratifying cabinet-approved legislation. Bennett is also a strong supporter of a bill promoted by Netanyahu that would anchor in law the status of Israel as the nation-state of the Jewish people. Netanyahu's Likud party had already secured deals with centrist Kulanu and ultra-Orthodox parties Shas and United Torah Judaism. So, while a deal has been struck, it's doubtful Netanyahu got what he wanted. He called the election in the hope of forming a more stable government, but the coalition leaves Netanyahu in command of just 61 of the Knesset's 120 members.
It will be a very, very fragile government. In fact, this election was called to avoid this very situation, and now Netanyahu finds himself with a government that is weaker than the one he had in March.
For that reason, Netanyahu's work may not be over. He's described the deal as a good start, but still intends to widen the coalition's knife-edge majority.
Now, with reactions in Washington to that formation of a new government in Israel, here's our correspondent Philip Crowther.
That this White House pretty clearly would have preferred Benjamin Netanyahu to lose out during those elections on the 17th of March. That wasn't the case in the end, and that now means that Benjamin Netanyahu, as Prime Minister, enters his fourth term. He will outlast President Barack Obama, who's now, of course, in his second and final term. The United States, what it will be doing with this government, well, it'll try to interact maybe as little as possible, because the United States, what it wants to do is concentrate on these nuclear negotiations with Iran. There is a deadline coming up at the end of June, and only then will any deal that might have been made between Iran and Western powers and other negotiating partners, will that have to be maybe sold to the Israelis. The White House so far says this, maybe expectedly. It says there will be no impact on the deep and intensive security cooperation between the two countries. And the White House adds that this administration expects to work closely with whatever government is made in Israel and, of course, has now been confirmed. And remember, this is a very, very difficult relationship right now between Israel and the United States, more than anything since that speech to a joint session of Congress by Prime Minister Netanyahu. That was at the beginning of March.